All right, y'all. Happy Monday, everyone. I hope y'all had a good weekend. 3-day weekend for a lot of y'all because today is Labor Day. So I hope y'all are enjoying it, spending time with y'all families, having barbecues, all that good stuff. I'm going to keep it straight to the point. Today, we're going to be talking about something called ownership. And we're going to be using rap and rappers and labels as an example of ownership and how it can be beneficial or detrimental to you. So first, we're going to address the fact that nowadays you're kind of starting to see a lot more rappers are independent, or they're just not signing to labels, or they're making their own record labels. You got like in the media, there was a lot about Billy Dolph turning down like $22 million from the label, and you got a lot of independent rappers like Joey Badass, Chance the Rapper, and then you got a lot of rappers that are just starting their own labels. So you got like Jay-Z, he started two labels. He started Rockefeller in 1995, and he founded Roc Nation as well in 2008. And then Dr. Dre, of course, founded Aftermath Entertainment. Nipsey Hussle founded All One In. Drake founded OVO in 2012. You have Rich the Kid. He started Rich Forever Music. And who else? Oh, NLE Choppa. He's a new rapper. He's young. He was 16 when he was offered $3 million. I'm not sure what the label company was that offered $3 million, but he turned it down, and instead he signed a distribution deal. We'll talk more about that later, but basically he still owns the rights to his music. So he also founded his own label. I think it's NLE, No Love Entertainment is the name of his label as well. And they usually make these labels in partnership with other labels, but it's not the same type of deal as if they were to just sign individually with the label. So basically, how the whole process works usually is you have a rapper, right? Or artist, whatever, musical artist, and they make some hits before they're like well known, before they blow up. They make some hits, and then they get some traction, they get a little popular, and then labels come and they make them an offer. They say, "Oh, we'll give you this many millions or this many hundreds of thousands to basically be a part of our label." And when you're 16, like NLE Choppa was 16 and you turned down $3 million, or if you're like 20, 21, a lot of these rappers are. This is when they're young, right? They just started getting some traction, so they're usually like 18 to 20. Getting offered $1 million when you're 21, 22, no one's gonna turn that down, right? So usually they offer them the money, and then what comes with part of the contract is basically that money that they give you up front is a loan. So they give you the money up front, the rapper, the artist joins the label, and then from there, the label works with the artist to produce music. They basically control the artist's image. They control the artist's, the time frame between when they make an album and when they're not making albums and stuff like that. That's why you look at Lil Uzi and people are like wanting him to release an album, and he's saying he can't because his label is stopping him from releasing. So basically, the labels, they start to own the artist through that loan that they gave him in the beginning, and through the contract that the artist signed at the beginning. So the label controls the image, so that's why you see like when a lot of rappers go do interviews and stuff like that, they're doing those interviews because either A, they wanted to do it, or a lot of times B, because the label is like, hey, go do this interview, it's good for promotion, it's good for yada yada, to get your name out there. So basically, the money that they get up front is the money, and then throughout a lot of the times the label does promotions. They promote the artist, they promote their music, they distribute the music. They handle a lot of behind the scenes work for the artist. So on top of that, the artist is actually having to repay the label for all of those services. They have to repay the label for distribution, they have to repay the label for production, studio time, art production, cover art for their albums. All that stuff is not free. And so basically the label's like, oh, okay, it's taking this much money for you to make this much album, including the cover art, studio time, promotion, production, all of that stuff. They include that into the cost of making the album, right? And so if that album doesn't sell enough, then the label can a lot of times have the option to get rid of that artist, or they could decide whether or not they want to keep the artist. And if they do decide to keep the artist, a lot of the times they're like, well, your album didn't perform as well as we thought it would. So, we have to make you have to do another album, right? You have to get back to work, go on tour. You have to do this, you have to do that in order to make the label their money. Because they gave you some money up front, but you have to basically work and do what they essentially want you to do in order to get that money back. And the reason why the label offers so much money up front, right, millions of dollars, is because they know that artist has value, right? The artist made a hit or two, right? And they're still independent. They're still not as known as they could be, but they're pretty well known based off of those hits. So they know that artist has value. And that's a key word. So they know that it's value, and they want to basically have ownership, at least part ownership of that artist and part of that value. So that's why they're willing to offer so much money up front in order to get more returns later on down the line. And with that ownership comes ownership of the music, ownership of the lyrics. So when an artist signs to a label, a lot of the time they're giving up their ownership to their music. They do make the music, they produce it, they get in the studio and they do all that. But at the end of the day, the label owns the royalties, the lyrics, they own all of that to the music. So if that music appears in a movie, or if that music appears, anywhere that music appears, the royalties for that music do not go to the artist. They usually end up going to the label, because the label is now who owns that value, right? That asset, that song, whatever it is, that album. The label's the one that ultimately owns it. So the label, like, they own the artists during that time period, they own their image, branding, all that. And they basically tell you, hey, we need you to do this interview, we need you to do that interview, we need you to go on tour for this many weeks or whatever. So that's that's the ownership aspect of the label, right? And so the reason why you're seeing a lot more artists that are either creating their own labels or just not signing in general and just remaining independent in a sense, is because they want to maintain that ownership, right? They don't want to give up the rights to all their music, all their lyrics, all their work essentially to somebody else, just to see a large sum of money in the beginning. And that's how they get a lot of these young artists. They offer them a lot up front, because who's going to turn down $2 million at 21. Most people are going to be like, oh, that's a good deal. I'll do all the work. I'll do whatever tour, whatever I have to do, whatever. It's not a lot, right? $2 million, I can take care of my family, buy a house, buy a car, buy jewelry, buy clothes. That's the first thing that comes to their mind. $2 million up front is a lot of money, but when you think about it in the long term, and you get the ownership of your music, long term you can make way more money when you just remain independent and you keep all your royalties and the ownership to your music, because you're going to be making money off of that from the beginning, the middle, and the end, right? Anytime that song appears in a movie, or if that song appears anywhere where you could collect royalties off of it, the artist is going to get those royalties. So that's why they're remaining independent, or they're making their own labels. When they make their own labels, they can set their own terms, kind of. And then a lot of the times when they do make these labels, they do still partnership with other larger labels. So like Rich the Kid, who founded Rich Forever Music, which is his label, he still partners with another label, a larger label that's more well established, to do distribution. So he makes the music and he controls, the ownership and the royalties to the music and the lyrics. But since he probably isn't as established as some of the other record labels, he lets them handle the distribution. So now that puts him in a place of power, right? Where he has the valuable product and he has the ownership of it. He just needs help distributing it, because the larger label has more connections and they have more of a network with stores, streaming services, with they could get him in connections with the people that can move his albums, that can move his music. So instead of signing to a label where they would handle that for you and more, he could handle most of the stuff by himself, or with the people that are around him, his managers and his peers. And then all he needs help with is distribution. So he gets to sign the deal with a record label strictly for distribution, and he can kind of negotiate the terms because he has the leverage, right? He has the valuable product. Versus when you're a new artist, you're 20 years old, you just made a couple hits, you don't really have the leverage or the power to negotiate, right? What are you gonna say? Oh, I have 2 hit songs, I want this many millions of dollars. That's not enough as a new artist. That's not enough to a large label for them to negotiate with you. Usually the label is coming from the place of power, versus Rich the Kid, or someone who owns all of their music and who has the potential to handle everything on themselves. They just need help with distribution. He has the leverage, right? He has the power, he has the product, he has the value. He just needs help getting it in stores, or getting it more known to other people, to the mass society, right? So leverage, ownership, and value ultimately is the main 3 takeaways from that scenario. So this applies to more than just like rapping or artists in general. This applies to every aspect of business, or just any venture, any money ventures or financial ventures that you take on. When you make something of value, you want to make sure that you have ownership of it and that you can leverage it to get to a better position. So like even business people in general, like let's say someone's in real estate, right? They want to have ownership of that house, because when they have ownership of that house, they can do way more. They're capable of doing way more when they have ownership of a house versus when they're just renting the house, right? When you're renting the house, you get to live in it. There's certain rights that come with renting. You probably can't rent the house and then rent it out to someone else for more to make money, right? But if you own that house, you can rent it to someone for more than you pay on it. You can take out equity on that house. You can take a loan, a big loan out with the house as collateral. So basically you get to when you have ownership of something, you get to leverage it and you get to use it in more ways than when you don't own something. So this applies to rappers, this applies to real estate, this applies to any business ventures that you go about. And when you can provide value with whatever you own, that's when you can leverage something, right? So like a house is valuable and you own it. That's when you can leverage it, versus something that's just valuable. If you don't own it, you can't leverage it. Or something that you own, but it's not valuable, then you can't leverage it. Let's say I own a pair of shoes, but they're only $100. I can't really leverage those shoes to get something that's worth $1,000. So that's basically the main takeaway of the whole analogy with rappers and record labels and stuff like that. Ownership, value, and leverage are three very important things that can help move your financial position up, right? So if you have something that other people need, then boom, you own it, and it's valuable because other people need it. So as long as you can provide a need and you can provide ownership of that need, then you can leverage it to get yourself into a better position. That's pretty much it. Let me see, I have some notes here, so let me make sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah, that's pretty much it. When you have ownership, value, and leverage, you put yourself in a better position. You don't really need handouts, or you don't really, you can leverage and you can negotiate and you can make deals with people so that you can put yourself and others hopefully into a better position. So with that being said, the main takeaway is ownership, leverage, and value. Just keep that in mind anytime you come across something. The same goes with people who have jobs, right? When you go to work, when you go to your job, who's in the position of ownership at your job? Most likely it's not you, it's your boss. But you do provide value at your job, right? Because that's why you're there. You provide value, you work for them, they hired you because you're valuable. So you have some leverage there because you are valuable, but at the same time, you don't, the owner probably has more leverage because, one, they own the place or they're your manager, right? And additionally, they provide value to you because they pay you. So, just keeping that dynamic in mind as you move throughout the world, as you move throughout your financial journey, just keeping in mind, are you in a place of ownership? Are you in a place where you're providing value? And are you in a place where you can leverage the value that you provide to move up? That's pretty much it. Hope that you learned a little something. I know it's kind of abstract here. It's kind of theoretical, but in the long term, it can really help you out, when you start to gain more capital, you start to gain more connections and stuff like that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope y'all had a good day today, or y'all having a good day today, and that y'all have a great week as well moving forward. See y'all next week. Peace.